Alrighty, told you guys this video would be coming soon. Hope you guys got a nice strong beverage in your hand, because this is going to be a long video. During the unboxing, we took a real good look at the body, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time here. Instead, we're going to jump straight into making some templates for our carbon fiber. I'm just going to do a couple panels here. There are a ton of tutorials out there. In fact, I go into great depth on it in my McLaren 570 build. So if you want to see more than what I'm doing here, just go check out that build or just any other builder on YouTube. Quality content out there, guys. Alright, so it's right about here we need to decide which way our weave on our carbon fiber is going to go. Basically the pattern. On the real car, it is all just one direction. Now, in the past, I've always kind of split it down the middle and done what Justin calls a matchbook or a bookend. I forget what he calls it. This car does not do that, and thankfully I'm kind of glad, because it's a bit of a pain in the ass to do that, I'll be honest with you guys. But it does look good. Alright, we'll worry about that later though. For now, let's get to making a template. Alright, so what I'm going to do to start off is I'm going to use the burnishing side of my hobby knife, and I'm just going to go around the body lines just to kind of do a crease inside the tape. And once I got that good and deep, I'm just going to trace it with my pen. And for the windshield and the back window, I'm just going to hit it with the fat edge of a Sharpie. It's not going to be precise, but it'll be close enough. I always overcut these anyway, just to kind of leave myself some margin for error. And I've decided all one single direction, just like the real car. And I'm going to do one last panel here, and that's going to be the rear bumper diffuser fascia thing. Not sure what to call this, because it's not really any of the above. And do take note that I was just pressing ever so slightly with that burnishing tool, and I am pressing even lighter with my pen here. All I really want to do is leave a mark. See right there, I just tapped through it. That is a good way to ruin the template. Alright, so let's look at this body here real quick. There is a real deep crease right there. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and add an extension there. We can always trim it shorter later. Oh, and I'm going to mark the pattern for my weave now. Also do note around the exhaust openings, there is some super deep pockets there. So to accommodate for that, I am just going to make the template a little bit bigger. I've been doing this a while, so I'm just doing a random guess. That's about how much extra we need. Off camera, I also did the front bumpers and the side skirts. Now that we got that done, we need to clean up this cast resin. I'm just going to use some grummy old toothbrush and some dirty acetone I used to clean my airbrushes with, and I'm just going to give it a good scrub. This acetone will evaporate completely before it has a chance to even hurt the resin. It's not going to attack it anyway. I let some of the cut-off spruce soak in it overnight. Didn't harm it a bit. But if you're worried, I'm going to do a little demonstration here for you. Just watch how fast this dries. And keep in mind, this is only sped up to double speed. So just count real slow and you'll see how fast that stuff dries. What, 3 seconds? So double this, 6 seconds. Then from there, I'm just going to do the same thing to every single part that came with this car. I will not stress this enough, but it is imperative that you guys get all that casting resin off this, or paint will not stick to it. And nor will super glue. Heads up there, guys. Clean these, and clean them well. And see what I mean about how fast this stuff evaporates? It's tedious work, but it needs to be done. Alright, so from there, I just took my scribing tool and I went through and I scribed all the panel lines just a little bit deeper. And I am not confident enough to do that to a viewfinder, which is how I work here. What I will do though is switch this back to a hobby blade, and I'm going to clean up just some of the strays, the strands. I'm not sure what you call this, but there are just some very little rough areas from the casting in the windows. And that's as simple as just scraping it off, man. It really is. And from there, I'm just going to give the body a good scuff with some 3200 grit just to give the primer something to kind of bite into. Speaking of primer, I am all out of my Tamiya white primer, and I could not find any anywhere other than online. But I needed some primer now, so I jumped onto the Lucas C's Facebook page and I started asking for suggestions. That duplicolor, well, a lot of people recommended it, so I picked up a can. I did a whole lot of testing. I sprayed it under different paints that I use, the 2K clear. This stuff is going to work. It's going to work just fine. Now, I will note that being that this is a automotive aerosol, it puts out a lot of product and it does it real fast. So I kind of scooted up the nozzle there, so whenever I push that, it's going to be almost bottomed out by the time it starts spraying paint. I should also note that this is 12 ounces. That's somewhere right around 350 milliliters, give or take. This can was $13.99. Now if we compare that to the Tamiya is 180 milliliters. Right now, buying it online, it's $17. And I'm not good at math, but this can is almost double the capacity, and it works on metal, which means I could use it for photo etch. So, yeah, more product, works just the same, and it costs less. I'm sold. Now, I'm doing some light coats here like I usually do. I'll be honest, I forgot I was working with resin. Resin does not react the same way plastic does when lacquer-based paints hit it, so feel free to go heavier coats on this to save yourself some time. And that is going to be a total of 3 coats. That is all we need for coverage on this car. Alright, so looking over this stuff reacts, it looks, it feels, and it sands just like Tamiya primer. I don't know if there's a difference, to be honest with you, other than the name on the can. Now, I did get just a few little imperfections, but that is just some dust falling in it. That stuff will easily sand out, so don't worry about that. So there's one little one on the driver's side door and another tiny one up here on the roof. You kind of see it right, it's up there. From there, I'm just going to take that same 3200 grit. I'm going to sand out that dust and do another light key on this just to give our paint something to bite into. When the light hits the body here, you can see that it has just a hint of a bit of sheen to it. That means it is super smooth, but it's also not reflective, so it's going to be rough enough for paint to kind of bite into it. Speaking of paint, we are using Splash Paints Bianco. I think that's how that's pronounced. This is a Lamborghini color, and I've had this for a while. And I guess you guys can't see in there, but I got about that much. And I'm sure you guys know just how well white covers, so hope I got enough. We're always going to start the same though, guys. Start from the bottom, get those wheel wells, all those nooks and crannies, easy to miss spots, and then kind of just work your way up. And I do realize shooting white paint over white primer, yeah, you guys can't tell. So I'm going to skip the paint phase. I'm going to move on to the masking. So I got half the body done and both the mirrors, and I remember my buddy saying he wanted me to do a masking tutorial. So Zach, this next 4 minutes and some odd seconds is for you, buddy. I will tell you what I did though, and that was pull out my hair trying to mask off this undercut area here for the hood and the cowl. Yeah, pain in the balls, guys. That sucked. From here though, it is just several straight thin pieces just to kind of match those tiny contours. And yeah, I know I said I'd just show you how to do it, so yeah, let's see how I do this. So the only advice I could give is go into this with a game plan. Try to cover as much area as you can with the least amount of tape. This stuff is expensive, so do not waste it. Feel free to reposition the tape as much as you need to cover the most real estate. Once I'm moderately happy with that, I'm just going to grab my, what I called that thing earlier, an embossing tool. I don't remember. But it's the back of my hobby knife. So we are going to do just like we did with the templates for the carbon fiber, and that is just run this across all those body lines. Basically, that is just establishing the body lines so we know where to cut our tape. Speaking of cutting the tape, I know you guys just saw me put a fresh blade in this a bit ago, but, well, it could be better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strop the edge of that and make it even sharper. Now, that was about 6 or 7 passes on each side, and you could already see just how much more polished that edge is. And now that that thing is sharp enough to split a hair in half, we are just going to go over and, well, cut all of our body lines. Now they always say to use a nice, fresh, sharp blade for this, but why? Just take care of your blades. See how easy that was? So now that that edge is smaller, I'm going to go back and I'm going to re-burnish it. Because now there is no resistance from the overlapping tape. I can get that real deep up into that crease where I need it. Now for that flap on the A-pillar, I'm just going to fold that over and I'm going to put it down inside the recess for the windshield. I'm going to do the same thing. Just establish that body line, then go back and cut off the excess. And do notice just how lightly I'm pressing there. It's really just almost the weight of the blade that I'm using to cut through that tape. That is how sharp that blade is. Alright, then from here, we're just going to do some recycling. I always leave my tape cutoffs on my work mat here, just so that I could reuse it. And being that we get a nice straight edge there, I am going to use that to contour the rear body panel. And believe me guys, take your time here. It is much, much easier to lift a piece of tape and reposition it than it is to move paint because you got it down in the wrong spot because you didn't take your time with your masking. Take your time. All up, it took me a whole night's worth of work to get all the masking on this done. And to me, a whole night's about an hour, so it's a lot of studio time I put into this. And do note, if you're going over a body line, there will be some overhang, so make sure you compensate for that when you go to burnish down the tape. It's just something you kind of, just once you start doing this enough, you'll get a feel for how much you need to overhang the tape. But it would not contour all the way. There is yeah, right there, access. We're just going to trim that off here in a little bit. Oh, I guess I cut that part out. I don't remember doing that. And again, we're just going to recycle some of my bench mat tape. That's what I'm going to call it. Bench mat tape. So just like last time, we're going to use this burnishing. That's what I called it, a burnishing tool. We're going to use this burnishing tool to establish our body lines. But once they're good and set and we're happy, we're just going to go in and just basically cut along the line. Yeah, you guys know how this works by now. Now that excess there, I'm just going to move that down just a little bit, and I'm going to cover a patch that I missed. And that is the roof done. All we got left is a trim around the passenger side door. And for that, I'm just going to lay down a strip of my 10mm Tamiya tape, and I'm just going to cut, was it about a 2mm strip out of it? I only buy one thickness, and if I need it to be thinner, I'll just trim it down. Now for this, you need the piece to be a little bit thin so it wraps around a contour, but you also need it to also be wide enough so that the next layer tape can kind of overhang it so you got good coverage so there's no paint bleed through. Yeah, it's about a 3mm strip. 3.5. I don't know. We're going to snip that off and we're going to run it along the back of this. Oh, I guess I cut that out too. I mean, yeah, I meant to do that the whole time. Instead, I wanted to show you guys how I'm going to use some more of my bench mat scrap tape to fill in that recess for the mirror. So this is what we're looking at though, guys. Basically anything that is white, aside from the body, that's all going to get sprayed in black. Zach, I hope that little demonstration there worked for you, man. And anyone else who learned something, cool. That's what I'm here for. And to save on some of the masking tape, I just used some of that clear plastic bag that the sprues come in. I never throw that stuff away. So before I start painting, there's one thing that I need to check first. The interior tub has that rear cargo shelf, so I do not have to worry about getting any black paint down in there. For the interior, I'm going to be going with a cream color, so trying to paint that over black would be a nightmare. So I just wanted to double check so I didn't have to mask that off down there before I start laying out paint. Now for this, I'm doing super light coats over the edge of the tape, and I'm going to let this dry a little bit. What that's going to do is it's going to create a seal between the paint and the body so there is no bleed through. Now I know it looks like I'm laying on a lot of paint, but well, that's black paint over white. That's just how it's going to look. I have had several people tell me that once I do my masking, if I go over it with the same color as the body color, it doesn't matter if I get bleed through. I'm too lazy to clean my airbrush that many times, and I gotta have faith in my masking. That's why I spend so much time doing it. Now, since I do speed this up, it's hard to see the jump stops and the edits between screens, but this ended up being about 3 coats. So, let's just see how much faith I have in my masking. Well, so far so good. I spoke too soon. Watch me zoom in on it out of embarrassment. How could I do that? It couldn't have happened in a better spot though. That right there, that mirror is going to hang over that and it is going to hide that just fine. The rest of it though, flawless. I'm super happy with this masking job. Now I did peel the tape off while it's still kind of wet. That way it still has some time to level out and not just have a hard raised line where that tape was. So one overnight later, we got a problem. One of my mirrors is gone. Yeah, I tore my entire bench apart looking for it, guys. This thing is a mess. It's on a spring clamp, so it could have pinched that and flung it off anywhere. Luckily, it just fell down and landed right there. I was honestly thinking this was the end of the build. Guys, I'm serious. I was panicking. Crisis averted, yes, but now I got a mess to clean up. So we're going to move on to our carbon fiber. And this time, guys, I am prepared. Yeah, not making that mistake again. I got my Q-tip, my silicone brush, a regular brush, hot tap water, my chemicals, and of course my decals. So I'm just going to take my decal and I'm going to throw it in that hot water. And it is a bit warm. I don't know why, but tap out here gets extremely hot. I should probably turn down the water heater. So I'm going to pull that guy out, let him sit there, just kind of drain off some of that excess moisture. In the meantime, I am going to take some of my chemicals and I am going to put a nice thin layer on the roof of that car. This is micro set. What it does is it softens the decal and essentially allows a two-dimensional object to fit into a three-dimensional shape. Being that this is a flat decal going on a somewhat spherical shaped roof. And being that this is a rather large decal, I could just position that where I want it to go with my fingers. Really no need to get that silicone brush out. What I usually do though is I leave myself some overhang so I kind of got a greater margin of error. I cut this one kind of close. So first things first, I'm going to use my wet brush and I'm going to get out as many as the wrinkles as I can and push that decal around, getting it down in all the corners. Then I'm going to move on to the Q-tip. You guys, you roll the Q-tips, never push it. Basically what I'm doing is I'm just using that as a squeegee to squeegee out all the water and moisture from underneath the decal. It's also doing something to take out some of those wrinkles. Now, I went kind of backwards here. I work the edges first just to see what I could do about those wrinkles. Then I go in and I start squeegeeing out all the moisture from the center and then just work your way out. I did that backwards just to see how the wrinkles were going to treat me. But once you got all the moisture wicked out and you're fairly confident you know where this decal is going to be sitting, we can now trim off the excess. And dragging that blade across that edge there, it kind of pulled up the decal. No big deal, just go back and squeegee out those wrinkles. Alright, so after a few minutes of Q-tip work, this is the best I'm going to get this. Now there is some kind of imperfection there. I don't know if that's from the tape or something under it that I missed. Not sure. Being that this is all we're going to be able to get with our hands and Q-tips, it is now time to apply some heat. The heat from a hairdryer will cause decals to shrink and tighten up. This is going to get out 99% of those wrinkles, guys. You saw how it looked a minute ago. You see how it looks in a minute here. I'm also going super hot with this. Being that it's resin, I'm not worried about it warping like a plastic body would. With the plastic bodies, I usually go a medium heat. So yeah, that's what it looks like after heat. There are still those imperfections. I cannot feel them though, so I think it's something in the decal. I did have super sticky masking tape over it when I made the template, so it's probably my fault. From here though, we are going to move on to our final setting chemical. This is Micro Sol. I don't know what this stuff does, but I can tell you that after about 30 minutes, if you touch the decal, it will leave a fingerprint. So I think what this does is it melts the decal. Yeah, I don't know. It's what it seems to do. It kind of just melts it and it just falls into place and conforms to whatever you got the decal on. I have seen this stuff use a flat decal sheet on some super complex shapes. And once it's done, it looks like that piece was molded in carbon fiber or it was painted on. So I let that set overnight, and that is how that looks. Those imperfections went away, by the way. Also, I did the rear fascia, the rear diffuser, the front splitter, and the front bumper area. So all I got left is the side skirts. So once I get that guy good in there and happy, I'm going to flip it to mirror the image, and I'm going to use that as the template for the other side. And I forget what I was going to say here, but it probably ignore my knuckles. I've been working on my truck. And we are finally done with all the carbon fiber. For the body anyway. The interior is going to have some, but we'll worry about that in the next video. I also thinned out some Tamiya smoke to get down inside those panel lines. I don't want them super black and dark, but I do want a sense of shadow there. Now as far as clear goes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot a super thin coat over those decals. That is going to prime the decals, so to speak. What it's going to do is it's going to lightly absorb some of that thinner and the clear. If you go too heavy with it right off the bat, that stuff is so hot and caustic that it will literally melt the decals off. Ask me how I know. And I do apologize for the bad angle here. Somewhere along the line when I was setting up, I bumped my camera and I didn't realize it till later on. I am still in the experimental phase that I was earlier, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do like Paul over at ISM does. So instead of doing my usual 2 or 3 medium to medium heavy coats, what he does is he'll do like 7, 8, maybe 10 super light coats and then just build it up. He always seems to have good results, so yeah, I'm going to give it a try. Now this is going to be coat 3 here. Notice this time I'm going vertical instead of side to side. So I always alternate my patterns between coats just to make sure I get good coverage. And I sped this up so much I don't quite remember where the split was, but I'm somewhere around coat 5 or 6 right now if I remember right. And so far I am just not happy with how that's turning out. Yeah, it's shiny, but it's not a layer of glass kind of shiny like I usually am by now. So I'm just going to kind of turn out my airbrush where I usually have it, and I'm going to lay on just another medium to a medium heavy coat. Now I know that works for Paul because I've seen it. I've seen the results and it is amazing. I just need some more practice, I think. It was right about here I realized I had bumped the camera, so I got that fixed for y'all. I should also mention I'm waiting about 5-6 minutes between coats here just to give this a chance to kind of level out. And if you guys are paying close enough attention, you'll see every now and then I peek into the cup of my airbrush there. Do not let this thing run dry, because when it does, it will just spatter out everything that's in the airbrush. And that is also one of the reasons where I do not run a cap on these things. I like to monitor my paint levels just to avoid any potential disasters. So I'm going to do one final inspection here to make sure everything is covered, nothing looks weird. Then I'm going to pull it out of the paint booth and let it dry on my bench. My paint booth is kind of dirty. I've been neglecting it and I don't want any dust or anything to fall into the paint. Now I'm using Mr. Hobby leveling thinner on this. What that does is it slows down the drying time of any paint. It practically eliminates orange peel and it gives the paint time to level itself out. In my case, it took about a week. See that though, guys? That is the layer of glass that I was referring to. Yeah, there's a few spots where I got some dust in it, but you know what? That sands out super easily. I'm not too worried. So, yeah, if you guys made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Have a good night.